To the extent that we live our lives in a manner that is consistent with the truth in our heart, we thrive.
Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hey everyone, podcast listening family. We are on for a roundtable discussion with Dr. Paul Meier, and we have Melanie Van here as well. Good evening to both of you.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
So something that popped in my head a couple of weeks ago, I just kept seeing it in my head, 7 deadly sins, and then what are the virtues? And Paul, you know the Bible back and forth, certainly better than I do. So I had emailed you and said, hey, can we talk about that? And you educated me. Well, there aren't really just 7 sins. Or will you explain, that piece that I wasn't aware of?
Yeah, there is a chapter, and we're going to share some verse from what King Solomon wrote about the 7 sins that God hates the most.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. But something that Jesus said, before we do that, I think something that Jesus said is real interesting, because the scribes and Pharisees back then we still use the word Pharisee as somebody that's legalist and self-righteous and all that sort of thing. So that's how those Pharisees were back then. Anyway, they asked, there's 365 sins listed in the Bible, things that are considered sin, and all of them are things that would hurt somebody. And none of us, whether people listening to us right now in our listening family believe the Bible or not, or believe in God or not, you still don't want to go around hurting people. So, but they asked Jesus, well, which of these commandments, 365 commandments, is the most important? He said, if you obey just this one, you'll automatically obey all the other ones. And he said that's to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor, and to love yourself. If you love God and love others and love yourself, then you don't need to worry about sinning. Because if you operate with that in mind, then you're not going to sin. But having said that, there are in Proverbs chapter 6, King Solomon said that there's 7 things that God detests. So you want me to list those now, or you want me to wait?
No, let's go ahead and list them. Then we can talk about them.
And it'll surprise people, because we know everybody's heard the 10 Commandments, and there's some things that are in the 10 Commandments that aren't on the top 7 list. I mean, 3 of them, 3 of the things in the 10 Commandments. But the 7 things that God hates the most would shock a lot of people if they've never read this, because number 1 on his list is a proud look, haughty eyes, and what that implies, especially to me as a psychiatrist, is arrogance, narcissism, thinking you're better than others, thinking the world revolves around you. A haughty look means you're looking down on others. You're important, they're not important. And the 3 of us have spent a lot of time doing programs on narcissism and sociopaths and how to have boundaries from them and all that. Well, that's important to God too. That's not only important to our listeners who love to listen to those programs about those topics, but it's important to God that somebody who chooses to be a narcissist and has haughty eyes and thinks he or she is better than others, or looks down on others, that can include people that are very religious sometimes, that think that they're godlike when they're being the opposite. There's people that are real self-righteous religiously too, that would fit in. Okay, then number 2 is a lying tongue, going around lying. about people, because that hurts people. That hurts people, and that happens in politics too, where people go lie to destroy other people's reputation
Right.
and things like that. But it happens everywhere where there's evil people. On Facebook and different things. Somebody's jealous of somebody else, so they make up lies about that person. But
Right.
a lying tongue is number 2. Number 3 is murder. Killing innocent people. It's not self-defense. It's not. Self-defense is always the correct thing biblically to do. And I mean, if somebody was trying to kill my wife, I'd kill him if I had to prevent him killing her or killing me.
Right.
So self-defense is different. Or if a country made war against America, I'd go fight for America, and I'd kill people on the other side in order to defend our country. But it says killing the innocent. Okay, then number 4 is a heart that plots evil.
Mm.
So if we have a heart, boy, and I'm convicted of that. I mean, there have been times when in my own thought life I've thought about evil things that I'd like to do.
Right.
I don't go out and do them, but boy, it's really tempting sometimes, and
Especially when you're dealing with a narcissist.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
inspire, they can inspire the most peaceful person to become a knife wielding.
Yeah, and all of us are a little bit narcissistic, because every time we do hurt somebody else, it's, we're, unless it's purely by accident, but anytime we do hurt somebody else by doing things that are wrong, then we're being narcissistic. So a heart that plots evil, and then feet. The next one is feet that race to do wrong. That there are people who just, as they go through day by day, they're selfish and they're bored, and if they get a chance, if they see an opportunity to do wrong, they'll rush off and do it. They have that kind of attitude. So feet that rush to do wrong. And then the next one is sort of like the one, a lying tongue. It's a false witness who pours out lies. Somebody that would go testify and be a witness against somebody when they know what they're saying is a lie, and willing to harm somebody's reputation or harm them or even in a crime that might die for, or might be executed for, or something. So a false witness who pours out lies. Okay, so let's see. Haughty eyes, lying tongue, murdering the innocent, plotting evil, racing feet that race to do wrong. That's 5. 6 is a false witness. And the 7th one is a person who sows discord. Somebody that pits one person against another. Now that's a borderline trait, isn't it? For if we admit a borderline into our day program, then even though the people are all nice and the therapists are all nice, they'll come up to me and say, "Your nurse said that she doesn't think you're very smart," or she'll tell my nurse, "Dr. Meier said that you didn't know what you were doing," or they'll tell one patient that another patient said something, and they're looking, they're bored if they're not doing that.
Right.
So they're sowing discord. And what's interesting is that in our culture, sexual sins, if you ask somebody what's the worst sin, I think a majority of people would say, the various sexual sins. And the sexual sins are listed in the 10 Commandments, so it makes the top 10 list, but there aren't any sexual sins listed in the 7 that God hates the most. But thinking that you're more righteous than others is number 1. So
Right.
people that will reject somebody for a sexual sin are committing a worse sin by being rejecting and haughty and thinking that they're so righteous.
Yeah.
Sexual sins are still wrong. They hurt people.
Right.
Sexual sin means something that hurts somebody else somehow.
Yeah. And boy, that haughtiness, I mean, it definitely ran through my family, an arrogant haughtiness. And I know it comes from insecurity and fear, at least in my family. But anyone that behaves in that kind of haughty, self-righteous way, which I have done in younger years, and then I realized, okay, that's not very attractive. And even though this was modeled for you, let's not be like that, because it's not attractive behavior. But many in the family have continued this, and it gets worse as you get older, because those lifelong habits of just behaving as if you are superior to others.
Yeah, I've probably committed 6 out of 7 at various times in my life to some degree. I've never murdered anybody, but there have been times that I, plotted to do something that was wrong, or that I impulsively did something that was wrong in my life. I don't remember any time that I purposely lied about somebody, but I bet if we saw everything that ever happened in my life, there probably have been. But these are sins that all of us have probably committed at some time in our lives, except for the murdering. Yeah. So that's what it's convicting.
Right. Melanie, what are your thoughts about this, and what have you thought about since we wanted to have this kind of a discussion?
Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Paul for giving us a Bible lesson. Thank you, Paul, for that.
Sure.
Thank you for pulling those out. I've never really thought about those in a Christian aspect. I know what the 7 deadly sins are, and I've never really stopped to think that they weren't actually listed in the Bible. So, a lot of times religions overlap, and the 7 deadly sins and the 7 virtues are actually something that's Roman Catholic.
Yeah, Catholic tradition.
So, yep, it's a Catholic tradition, and the 7 deadly sins in Catholic tradition are lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. And then basically the virtues are opposite of those. So, Kristin, I think you have the list of virtues, don't you?
Yep, I do. So, yes, the 7 virtues that are listed are faith, hope, charity, fortitude, justice, prudence, and temperance.
Why don't we discuss what those mean? Because those, just rushing through those words.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what some of them mean. So, what's the first one? Is what?
Faith.
Okay, so having faith. I guess we all know what that means.
Faith, a belief in the right things, including virtues. Hope, taking a positive future view that good will prevail. Okay. Charity is concern for an active helping of others.
So charity is love, being motivated. It's not just going out and doing something nice in front of the television screen.
Right.
I don't think. I think it implies doing something nice for somebody else because you care.
Right, exactly. And, being of service to others, helping others. Fortitude is, never giving up.
Not giving up. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Justice is being fair and equitable with others.
Yeah.
Prudence is care and moderation with money.
Prudence is?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what that word means. So it's mostly about money?
That's what they listed as under the 7 virtues in terms
prudence.
Of prudence.
Being wise with your money, or
being wise with being wise with it. So
not wasting it on foolish things.
Exactly, respecting it and living in moderation with it. In
the Bible, at the same time, I was reading Ecclesiastes last month, and the Bible says, if God blessed you with wealth, then enjoy it, but don't live for it.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with being wealthy, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying it and things like that. Some people, there's some legalistic Christians that think that even if God gave you $1 billion, you should live on the poverty level.
Right.
And give all the rest away, probably to them,
Right.
And so I don't think God calls for anybody to live on the poverty level, you know. But he said, if he blesses you with wealth, then enjoy it, but don't live for it, you know. And so
Yeah,
I
I
guess it
think,
would be prudence. Prudence doesn't mean, you know, where you live in a hole in the wall and eat peanut butter every day, you know.
right. And it's interesting. The next one is temperance, which is moderation of needed things and abstinence from things which are not needed. So I kind of, it's my own definition, but I think when money is such an interesting and triggering subject for so many people that often, and it can be so very seductive. So often people will start worshiping money instead of worshiping, their faith and worshiping God. So care of it and using it with moderation, respecting it, and not, do you really need 12 Ferraris? I mean, that kind of.
Yeah. And people also misinterpret the verse in the Bible. There's a verse in the Bible that says that money is the root of all evil, and what it's really saying in the original languages is that money is the root of all kinds of evil. You know, you can use money in a deceitful way. You can use it in a, to hire a hitman. You can use it. There's a lot of different ways that a lot of sins that you can commit with money, but it doesn't mean money. Some people tend to make that think. There's people that'll lay a guilt trip on you if you have money and make it, make it feel like if you are blessed financially, that somehow that's a sin, you know.
Right. Or they think that you shouldn't have any problems, that you're not allowed to feel upset or down or sad. They don't allow for you to be human simply because they think that, having financial wealth means that you don't have you're not human. You don't live life still as a human being. So I think, that's always been interesting to me. I had someone that I used to take walks with and then stopped because it kept coming back to the same subject. They always asked about my work. And when I would explain kind of what I did, they'd say, wow, I wish somebody would write me checks like that. And it just kept going on this theme. And I finally, on the walk, said, every time you bring this up, you then talk to me and say these things like, wow, I wish, da 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 da. And no one hands me a check on a silver platter. I actually work to get paid for the services I provide. So I'm not quite sure, where you're coming from when you say these things, because I do work hard for them and I don't in any way feel guilty about getting paid. And that ended the walks around the park.
Yeah.
My finally saying, I've had enough of this conversation that happens every time you take a walk. If you want to go make money and do whatever you want to do, you have the absolute right and choice to go do so. And maybe one of the reasons why it isn't happening for you is because you're so bitter and envious about it from other people.
Yeah. Okay. So now I know what prudence means because I didn't know what that one meant.
So
I think it's kind of as temperance, right? Because prudence and temperance would kind of be the opposite of gluttony, right? I think that would kind of be the sin versus the virtue. And I think the love of money leads to all kind of sin. I think that's
that's
verse.
it.
That's it. For Paul, remember, it's the love of money. Yeah. So you can, a lot of people have lots of money, but they don't worship it and they do good things with it. But the love of money will lead to evil things. So it's such a difference. It goes to show how one word can totally misconstrue a sentence,
The two things on the sin side were gluttony and greed, and those seem to be the polar opposite of prudence and temperance.
Yep, they do.
What were the other ones?
They do.
Or was prudence the last one?
That was the last one.
Oh, okay. I've got the 10 Commandments here if you want to.
Yeah, let's talk about
hear
that.
those. Because I couldn't tell you what they were from memory or anything, and so I just looked it up. It's in Exodus chapter 20, and these were 10 commandments that God gave from Moses to the Jews. It doesn't mean that we can't learn from them too, and try to abide by them, but they were given as laws for the Jews. And the first one is.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
And the first one is don't have any other gods but me. And of course, that would have a lot of implications. Like you can make money your god. You can make sex your god. You can make a lot of different things your god. Or you can even, some of the people back then would, paint a stone and call that their god and bow down to the stone and things. In fact, that's the next one. Don't make for yourself any idols of any kind or images of things in the heavens or on earth or in the sea that you bow down to. You must not bow down to things like this or worship them, because there's a real God, not a stone or a statue that you make or something like that. And then don't misuse the name don't swear, don't use God's name in vain. And that's getting to be quite a habit nowadays.
I have to watch that one. I mean,
yeah.
I don't have to watch it like I used to, but
you hear it so much.
you hear it so much. And then if someone walks over to me and they're wearing a cross or maybe they're a nun, the first thing that will fly out of my mouth is some kind of thing that I should not say, but I'm working on that. I don't know what that is.
Kristin, the rebel in you.
I feel horrible about it, but it's like, okay, anyway. I know, no one likes commercials, but seriously, folks, without the help from these organizations, we could not stay on the air. Please give a shout out to zencharts.com. If you're a mental health or addiction treatment center, you'll want to use their EHR. It's gorgeous, and they're just good people. And also MyGenetics, MyGenetx.com, because knowing your genetic code empowers your mental health treatment. And lastly, CopeNotes.com. We love getting positive messages right to our phones every day from Johnny Crowder. He's the lead singer of Prison, a heavy metal band sharing their music about suicide prevention, addiction recovery, and mental health. See, that was painless. Support them as they support us. Back to the show.
And then observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Work. God told the Jews to work 6 days a week, but take 1 day a week that you rest on. And for them, it was Saturday. And then in the New Testament, for some reason, the people that became Christians started meeting together on Sunday rather than Saturday, and they gathered together and had communion and gave their tithes and things like that and offerings. And so a lot of Christians call Sunday the Sabbath. Personally, I don't think God cares what day you use as a special day of rest, but it's a good principle to have. Even farmers will grow crops for like 6 years and then grow nothing for a year and give the land a little rest. And then let's see, the next one is honor your father and mother, and if you do, you'll live a longer life. But the honor your father and mother, a lot of people misinterpret that one too, because I have patients whose moms and dads beat them, molested them, treated them just horribly, verbally and every other way, and they think, I'm supposed to honor my father and mother, so they think that means they should go put up with crap, and you don't. honoring them means to do what's reasonable considering the circumstances, and it might be that when they're senile and have Alzheimer's and they're dying in a home somewhere, that you might even, no matter how bad they were, you might want to send some money to help out, or you might not. But honoring them doesn't mean. In fact, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "Obey your father and mother." But if you look at the Greek again, a lot of people read the English words and misinterpret them. But in the Greek, it actually says, "Little children, obey your father and mother." It doesn't say adult children should obey them. And so we should honor them, show respect for them in one way or another. But that may be by totally not speaking to them or ever seeing them again if they're misused. But anyway, honoring your father and mother. And then don't commit murder, don't commit adultery, don't have sex with somebody else's mate, don't steal, don't testify falsely against your neighbor. That was in that top 7 that in Proverbs 6. Don't covet your neighbor's house. Now, it doesn't mean if your neighbor's got a really cool house, there's nothing wrong with thinking, boy, I wish I had a house like that. Coveting your neighbor's house it means I wish I had his instead of him.
Right.
That's what coveting your neighbor's house is. Don't covet your neighbor's wife. Yeah, so if your neighbor has a wonderful wife and you think, boy, I hope I have a wife like that someday, and you're single, or you might even think, I hope my wife becomes more like that someday. Somebody might think that's not a nice thing to joke about. But anyway, but coveting your neighbor's wife means I wish I had her instead of him, or I wish I had him instead of somebody else. If it's a woman lusting, or coveting your neighbor's donkey or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. I wish I had that instead of him is what's wrong. If you think I hope someday I have something like what he's got, then that's not coveting. And so I guess that's it. That's the 10 Commandments.
Let's talk about the coveting one, because that in terms of us having a healthy self-esteem and healthy well-being and a healthy mental, how you feel about your mental health. Coveting is such an interesting thing, because you're right. It's very different from what you're saying, Paul, where, okay, I admire someone and what they've achieved or some of the things that they have. And so I am grateful that I know someone who has those things, so that I know that I can have those things too, but I'll have them for myself. It doesn't mean taking them away from somebody else. And I think that's where, I don't know where that comes from and what that is, psychologically, where you see, I had someone I knew that always wanted to be taken care of by someone else. And so they were constantly looking for a caretaker. And so they would covet the way that, let's say, a husband took care of his wife, and they instead of praying or whatever, they were thinking about or trying to develop to have that kind of relationship, they instead wanted and tried to go and get get that husband for themselves.
Yeah.
And it never works out that way. It does not work out. And it's an interesting thing, like what that is psychologically when people do that. Oh, I want that, so I'm going to take it from who I believe has it.
Yeah, I've said a lot of times to my clients or in speeches that there's 8 billion people on planet Earth, and to some extent or another, we all feel like a nobody at times. We all feel insignificant and unimportant at times in our lives. And the rat race is that most people go through life feeling like a nobody and trying to prove that they're not a nobody. And they do that in the wrong ways. They do that by lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life in biblical terms, but sex, power, and money in psychological terms. So sexual conquering of people, using people as objects, whether they're married or not, or taking somebody's mate away from them. So sex, power means, power struggles where where you want to be more powerful than others so that you can manipulate and use them in the wrong way, and less the flesh, less the eyes. And the pride of life is just, being, again, prideful and haughty, and acting like you're better than others. We compete with the Joneses, and so most people are in a rat race to some extent or another, where we feel like a nobody and go through life trying to prove that we're not a nobody, instead of loving and being loved, and developing our character and gaining insight and things like that.
Right. Developing those things for yourself. Melanie, what do you think about that piece where people covet, and not only is it that they covet, which is really just a thought about it, but then they take action on that.
Yeah, I mean, clinically, I think about it, how it's just so closely related to jealousy, and just wanting something that someone else has. But I feel like I've seen kind of two types of jealousy when I think about clients. And one type of jealousy is just kind of like your common jealousy that you think about. You're jealous of a beautiful woman. You're jealous of anything that anyone else has that you don't have. And then there's another form where I feel like people really aren't envious or jealous, but they're bitter because they don't have what the other person has. And there's a difference. It almost comes from a different place. So there's like bitterness that they don't have it. It's not that they can actually appreciate the other things. They're not really jealous or coveting it. They're just bitter themselves that they don't have those things. So, I mean, that everyone has moments in their life, I think, where we covet and wish things and want things differently for our lives. But I mean, just for our audience, it's such a waste. I mean, what is coveting or being jealous of someone else really going to do for you? If you really want something someone else has for yourself, then make a plan and try to have it.
Right.
Or find things you may have things in your life that are just that the other person that you're coveting will never ever have. And so it's really about perspective, and those are the types of conversations I would try to have with my clients. And a lot of times, Paul, they were borderline clients, really struggle with coveting and jealousy, I feel like. And so a lot of times the conversations would just be about perspective and appreciating their own traits. And I think a lot of times, too, that jealousy comes from, or coveting even comes from a place of you don't know who you really are.
Yes.
And so there's something about that really ties into jealousy and coveting, because when you don't know who you are and you can't appreciate the things about yourself that are wonderful, then you covet these things that other people have that you think makes them happy. Generally, people that covet and are jealous are generally unhappy people, in my opinion. They're just they're not happy, and they don't know how to find joy, I guess, maybe. And I would try to connect them to being able to find joy in their life instead of just playing on the surface of being happy or unhappy, because we're all happy and unhappy sometimes. But boy, it can lead to some destructive things, though. I have known, and we have all seen people do horrific things over coveting jealousy.
When they actually do it, when they go and take the wife or take the husband or take the job.
There's another thought. There's fool's gold and real gold, and people back in when there were the gold rushes and all that, a lot of people would go to those places to try to mine gold and get true gold. And I just looked up fool's gold, and there's a chemical. There's something called a pyrite, a shiny brass-colored mineral that almost perfectly mimics the look of gold, but it's fool's gold because it's not real gold. And in life, people think like basing your self-worth on your net worth. You know what I mean? Right. There's people that will devote every free minute trying to get more money so that they can feel important, where they want the wealth to make, like I say, the net worth to be their self-worth. And whereas somebody else devotes their time to their kids and to their mate and to their friends, and they love and are loved, and they have true gold. So they have the true gold, and people who just get money to the sacrifice of loving and being loved have that pyrite. They've got fool's gold.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting too to watch people that, okay, they covet, then they put a plan together to take the money or the person, the mate or the boyfriend or girl, whatever it is, for themselves. And then when they get it, this thing that they coveted that was going to make all them happy and fulfilled and whatever, and then they get it, and then they're angry and bitter because it isn't what they thought it was
Mm-hmm.
going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And and so for some carry massive amounts of guilt because they know that what they did was wrong. They know that they weren't coming from a pure, authentic place. They, when they were inserting themselves into someone else's life in order to steal them from someone else or steal their money, the ones that do have a conscience about it end up living with a whole lot of guilt and regret and physical ailments and all kinds of things that can happen to you when you when you seek to take.
Something that I did that what you said just reminded me of is that I always had high regard for doctors when I was growing up. I mean, I would barely speak to one if one came to our church because I'd be, sort of in awe of doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, boy, when I become an MD, I'm going to finally feel so important. I not feel, but I thought I'll be important. I'll have an MD degree, And I remember graduation, walking across the stage and getting my diploma and feeling really proud of it. And then about 15 minutes later, it dawned on me, you know what? I'm not any different. I'm still me. And I actually felt real sad. I felt real sad because everywhere I walked, my butt followed me, So I was still me. I wasn't any different. And all this, all this excitement that I thought I'd have by being an MD, it just was nothing. It was meaningless.
Yeah, and what makes those things meaningful when you have loving people to share those things with, and that isn't your idol, and that sometimes comes with age and humility and realizing that what makes those. Yes, it's wonderful to be proud of your accomplishments, absolutely, but realizing that doesn't make you better than anyone else, or it doesn't mean that you have arrived.
Yeah, figuring out ways to use my MD to help other people. Now that's exciting. I'm still excited about that. I love going to work every day and helping people, with the training that I've had.
I've had interesting experiences with people where, someone had their master's degree in counseling or whatever it was, but we'd be having a business meeting, and actually I had a woman who came into my company and she coveted and she wanted to take, and she did try to take all my clients. It didn't work out for her. Her company completely went bust within less than a year, but she definitely tried to take my clients, and she was so envious when we would go to a meeting, and she'd say, "Why do the presidents of these companies pay attention to you? I'm the one with the master's degree."
Yeah.
And I was like, because I don't have a big fat ego, and I am a pleasure to be around. Work on that, and then maybe you'll have those things. But to be haughty, that's like a sticking point with me. Haughtiness.
Imagine how sad that would be. To go through life wanting everything that's everybody else's, and just being that narcissistic. That would be sad.
Yes.
That would be a depressing life.
And then just like not being able to have gratitude for anything. I mean, moments of gratitude for me have been some of the most fulfilling moments of my life, of just feeling absolute gratitude for what I do have and thinking about the things that I don't have. I mean, I've been blessed with so much, and we all get frustrated. Why me? Everyone asks that, but I can't imagine living like that either. It is sad.
Yeah, we mentioned King Solomon earlier, and King Solomon, he said he thought that power would bring him, worth, and he became the most powerful king on earth. And he said, it's all meaningless. It's meaningless. I don't feel any better. I still feel bad. And then sex. He had 1,000 wives and concubines. And he admitted right in Ecclesiastes, he says, and I did not withhold from myself any pleasure. So he did, he was a busy man. He probably had 3,000 kids,
Right.
Maybe that's why Jewish people are so smart. He was the wisest man that lived, And but anyway, he had 1,000 wives and concubines. I don't remember if it was 700 concubines and 300 wives or the other way around. And he said, but it was all meaningless. It probably was fun for a while, but he said it became meaningless. It didn't mean anything. It didn't bring me. I still felt empty inside.
Right.
And so he had, and then he thought, wealth. If I'm wealthy enough, I'll feel important. And he actually, according to tradition, he actually had silver, laying all over his yard. I mean, he was so wealthy. I mean, he just had immense wealth. And when he gathered it, he said, I still feel empty. It's meaningless. It doesn't mean a thing. And then he concludes Ecclesiastes in chapter 12. He says, what I found is meaningful is the great commandment, like Jesus said. He said it's loving God and loving other people and being the whole duty of man, is serving mankind, giving up of yourself to love others and help them. And he said that brings meaning. He finally found what brings meaning. And I think that's pretty cool.
I do too. And the reason for wanting to do this particular topic and how does this tie into our mental health? Well, it really does. It does tie into your mental health because there are so many diagnoses out there. And many of them are things that hopefully become lessened over time, and there can be a root cause for many of these things. And many of the root causes of ill health in any capacity are the ways in which we are not living virtuously.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, kind of giving a reason why we wanted to talk about this was, these are very simple ideas that you can look at and incorporate into your own life and not punish yourself if you have, except for the murder thing, that you should definitely be in prison for.
Yeah.
But for everything else, you're not a horrible person if you've sinned. You've erred. It's a chance for redemption.
Right. And we could have a whole program on all the biochemical things that happen in our brain when we are sinning. When you have bitterness and serotonin depletes out of the brain, and the adrenal corticotrophic hormone out of the hypothalamus and all that sort of thing. You have fewer antibodies to fight off diseases, and doing evil things, whether you believe in God or not, doing evil things destroys you.
Absolutely.
Emotionally and physically.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to both of you. I picked this one, so next week it's one of y'all's turn to pick the topic.
That was an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely.
It's made me think. It's definitely made me think about a lot of things. So
I thought about it for 2 weeks and had really interesting dreams.
And remember, don't feel bad in our listening family. Don't feel bad if you thought, oh no, I'm a horrible person because I sinned. Because again, the Bible says we all fail in many ways. Yes. We all fail in many ways. So we all do things that are selfish and wrong at times. But we're a good person is somebody that's working on it.
Exactly. Working on it and having some
doing the bad part of learning how to be better. I mean, that's, we all every single day are doing those things, and those are our moments to be better.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And thanks to our listening family for another edition of Roundtable with Dr. Paul Meier on Mental Health News Radio.
hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.